you start with straight crane line. This has a 1 inch folded edge. So just like this, we started any basic skirt when we started draping the basic skirt. So this is the beginning phase. So a couple of inches, two or three, and here is 7 inches, and this is the cross grain, starting like this. And this is a excess that we can, this is the, what would be the dart intake and side seam curve. It's all this amount. And that we can use to create flare by moving this excess down, 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 and creating the flares here on the lower hip, below hip level a little bit. Okay, so flare is one of those. You will notice that this is also manipulating the crane line. It's not the same as bias, but it is nevertheless, crane line will shift to somewhere else than where it is in a basic, in most situations that we work horizontally straight cross grain, and lengthwise grain is the vertical line. So vertical line will stay as it is, but the cross grain will shift and it starts to curve down like this. So few difficulties, even though the process itself is pretty easy, there are few complications. For example, that you make the flare appear evenly, not all in one specific spot, but that it evenly settles throughout the skirt. The hemline kind of flares evenly. And secondly, then when we add the back, basically the same way, that this crane line dropping, falling down, kind of come on a fairly similar spot. So we know the back flare and the front flare are, if not absolutely equal, they should be similar, almost. They could be almost together. Then you need to know how white the fabric itself is, because whenever we add flare to the hem, depending how long is the skirt, how long you determine the skirt is, then how much it will take space down here. The longer the skirt, the wider your hem will be. If it's a short mini skirt, which you can also do, if you don't want to do a little longer, make it a little shorter. You need less fabric. And the fabric down here on the hemline is not as wide, doesn't need that much width. Hi, welcome back. Okay, so two pieces, almost similar. I just don't know yet quite sure, so I just keep this whole piece here until I know how much this front will take. So let's do, I'll just do it right away and see what happens. So start with straight. Here we go. It's straight. Pin it somewhere here, and then you need to start slashing again. Slash a little carefully before you know how much to slash, and then release some of the fabric here to smoothen downwards. You kind of smoothen downwards, and then you can pick up here pick up here for flare. Pin it so you know how much you are flaring it. So this one, this is straight, then if I lower the fabric, this is why you need to have a couple of inches above baseline, because you may end up 0 here. So be careful not to take everything in one place, but flare it gradually by releasing the fabric from the hem. So you can already start seeing that the grain lines start dropping here. So pin the flare, smooth on the waistline, shift it kind of round towards hem, and pin the amount of flare you want to add in certain areas. So this would be first, then again slice. First a little bit carefully before you know how much we need to slice it. And then shift fabric a little bit down and more flare will appear. Try to keep the amounts of flare fairly equal so that not everything is in one place, but it would be evenly distributed. And again, I pin on the waist and shift fabric down, and this much already dropped. So again, smoothen the fabric, collect the flare in one area, pin it, and then again same procedure. Slash. If you slash all the way to the waistline, your waistline will be smoother. And here would be now the 1, 2, 3. This would be the 4th. I might have 5 flare points. Okay, and maybe one more flare point. And then I have practically used almost all of the 2 to 3 inches that I added. It's almost gone. And this would be the last flaring. Right there. Okay, and now I just smoothen the fabric over waistline here and mark what would be the side seam. So here's the side seam, and you can see how the hem drops. Here it is, how it drops down, and that is something, whenever you have flare, you need to even out. Remember when you design and make a dress, if you don't, and you have flared skirt, you have to even out the hem. If you don't, it might look a little droopy on the sides. Yeah, and that looks like, I mean, whatever is your style feature, make it strong, not just wee bit. Wee bit becomes, looks more like oh, that was a mistake, sorry. So if you want to use, for example, a dropped waist, dropped hem make it really dropped hem at the sides, that it doesn't look like that was, you know, the handkerchief hem. That's okay, but make it really a strong effect, so that it doesn't look like that. Oops, forgot to even out the hemline. We have this device that you can mark with chalk, even hemline. So this is very important before you finish the garment, that you look at the hemline. Also, the cage on the dress form is helpful to have the side hemlines evened out. So here's now the waistline and a little bit of the side seam rubbing right here. And now I need to determine how long will this skirt should be. So if you look at the hemline at center front, this would be the maximum. You can have it. And then all you got to do is kind of mark even line. So you can use the cage as a measuring point where you measure where it is a straight line, and then add this distance throughout the hem. So you need to have a reference point somewhere, and marking the cage could be a good reference point to create a straight hem here. And a little bit of flare can be added while throwing it, but not very much. We don't want to have awful lot of added to. We don't want to have too much added. Okay, so this is about all I can do on a dress form, and if I take it off to throw it and then check it on form again. And then next would be just adding the back. Similarly, back flare may be a little bit less. Altogether, often back could be a little bit narrower, so also maybe a good idea is to have a wee bit less flare in the back as what we have in the front, and adding just a little bit on the side seam. So this is what it looks like. So you can see that here is a straight line marking for the hem, and if I want to utilize the whole length, I just measure same distance all along here to keep it even. Okay, yeah, this is quite a lot of flare. If you look at this one here, this is pretty much. So definitely, even a little, when you have a longer garment, even a little bit of flare will show. So take a long ruler, and a really, really long ruler here. So here's the baseline, starting with square, and then it becomes no darts needed. Often no darts, so you dissolve those darts into this flare process. So how you may add a little bit of ease or leave a little bit of ease on the waistline, but no darts. A little bit of ease could be okay. And hip may have mild curve here, a little bit of curve, and then a straight line pretty much. And this is where you can add a little bit of, if you want really, really. So I just add a little bit because this is already fairly flared. And now I just measure how at center front, this is almost 6 inches, not quite. I add that same amount to make to utilize the possibly more, utilize this whole piece. So it was 5 and 3/4. Okay, so here is now the front. This is very flared actually. So even though it wasn't all that much, it still became pretty strongly flared. Okay, and now I can cut it with a little bit of seam allowance at the side seam and waistline. Usually I could even use this as a guide, the front piece as a guide. How much fabric will I need for the back? So once I have the this one will come. Just have to. It can come pretty much from the positioning this, and maybe a little bit less flare for the back. So this one could be just enough. So if I have a wee bit less flare for the back, this may be just good for that. Or I could shift the center 1/2 inch off, and this will be just about right. So 1/2 inch off, back is a little bit narrower, and maybe even a little bit less flare. And this one, these two lines come together, or fairly close. If not fully in, fairly close would be ideal. So my back is about 1/2 inch, narrower at center back and a little bit less flare on the back as what I have in the front. And back is usually a little bit lower at center back. If you look at your dress form, what happens is there is a little bit lower center back compared to center front. So now if I put these two pieces together, again I start matching them from the crane line positions. So if some of the position is higher or lower, I can balance it on the dress form, but I start matching the crane line positions. Just a few more pins and we will see what happens. So I used the flared skirt pattern. If you go to the gallery, there's the black kimono top with flared skirt. It's a coat dress type, and it has a bottom part is flared skirt, and I just added 3 inches here so that I can overlap the two fronts. And so there you can see how you can use this pattern, flared skirt, for a dress. Or you can add this one if you want to make a dress with the ampere top, or if you want to make a skirt part for, we are going to make also what it's called the yeah, if you want to make a skirt to go with the bodies, what would work also well is
cotton top.
yeah. Yeah, so you just have to design a top. So now you can see that this is a little bit much, so I can kind of redrape it, take it in from this part, so creating this flare. How much do I need it here? So here is, see how when I match this point here, I have excess here quite a bit on the waist, and then the flare kind of comes pretty naturally. So this is basically just, you can get the back following the front, minus a little bit off, minus a little bit of less flare, minus mildly less on the waist, and then just do the fitting on the dress form. And this excess here I can pull in. And much easier, faster than starting the back on the scratch as well. So this is kind of faster getting, because they are so similar, and we want ideally equal amount of layer. So I'm taking in a little bit on the back, making it a little narrower, even though I already cut it slightly narrower. Seems that it wants more. So, what do you think?
Very nice.
Great.
And look at the hemline
It's even.
like this, and we always have to remember that there is some area which is very biased, so it tends to stretch in that area. There may be, suddenly you may find that some parts have stretched in the most biased areas, like here. So even if I marked straight line, I still probably have to check it out after a while until I know it needs to be a little higher in the back. So when you have only these two pieces, front and back, what comes extremely important? What is the balance between the two? How do you balance the flare? How do you balance that side seam maintains right in the where it should be, remains straight. So sometimes you can lift it from centers. If I lift it from here, it may affect the whole balance of the whole skirt. That makes a difference. Or if I lift it from the center back or back waistline, it shifts. Again, if I lift it from the back, it causes balance shaping. So very little lifting in the back, center back, waist, center front, waist, may cause the whole thing being kind of, it's not fully balanced. So that is where the waistline should not be too round, not too straight. So it should be round, but how much it's round, or how much it would be. It's not fully straight, but it cannot be awfully round like this either. So very important to get this balance control from the waistline. How the front and back pieces relate to each other, you control it mostly from the waistline. Good. There it is.
Thank you.
Let's good. Think about how you can use